Everyone loves a generous person. They make the world a better place, whether they pick up a restaurant tab or see a need and respond. But are we as Canadians generous? Well, apparently not as generous as we used to be. Joining us to share the research on this is Grady Munro. He is a policy analyst at the Fraser Institute and the co-author of the study Generosity in Canada, the 2024 Generosity Index. Grady, welcome to Bridge City News. Great to have you on today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so Grady, give us the latest stats. So are Canadians more or less generous than in previous years?
So, what we found is that generosity in Canada has been declining for many years now. And how we measure that is we look at two metrics. We look at the share of Canadian tax filers who are donating to charity, and we look at the share of total income that is donated. And what we find is that in 2022, which is the latest year of data, both of those metrics hit 20-year lows. We saw that only 17.1% of Canadian tax filers donated to charity, and only 0.5% of total income was donated.
So what is the actual percentage of total income that was donated in 2022? Like, do you have numbers for how much average people are actually donating compared to Canada's all-time highest percentage of total income?
Yeah, so as mentioned, the share of total income in 2022 that was donated was 0.5%. And in the last 20 years, the highest level we've seen was in 2006, and that saw Canadians donating 0.72% of their total income. So we have seen a considerable drop since then.
Okay, do we know why?
It's a good question. We've seen this decline occurring for some time now, and while unfortunately in this study we don't look at the specific reasons or factors that are causing this decline, but we can highlight certain things that are likely coming into effect. We know that research says people's level of after-tax income, their religious affiliation, age of the population, level of education, all of those are factors that help determine the level of generosity in a jurisdiction. But we can't say specifically which of those factors is causing this decline.
Okay, so which province had the highest percentage of tax filers that donated to charity? And then on the flip side, which had the lowest?
Yeah, so in 2022, we saw that Manitoba, it had the highest percentage of tax filers donating to charity at 19.3%. And on the other end, we saw New Brunswick had the lowest share of tax filers donating at 14.7%.
Wow. Are there any particular reasons Manitobans are more generous than the rest of us?
It's a very good question because Manitoba has certainly been the most generous province for some time now in Canada. But as mentioned, unfortunately, we can't pinpoint or we can't say exactly why that is the case, other than pointing at the factors that go into charitable giving in terms of education, level of after-tax income, those types of things.
Maybe they need to consider changing their license plate from friendly Manitoba to generous Manitoba. There you go, huh? So which province donated the highest percentage of its aggregate income to charity? And then on the flip side, which one donated the least?
Yeah, so similar to the other metric, we see Manitoba at the top end. In 2022, Manitobans donated 0.71% of their total income to charity, which was the highest of any province in Canada. And on the lower end, we saw that Quebec donated the least share of total income at just 0.26%.
Wow. Okay. So that's a big difference there. So, what are some of possible reasons for the much lesser degree of generosity in Quebec? I would imagine it's hard for you to pinpoint exactly what that is. You're just looking at the numbers.
Absolutely, yeah. And what we've seen is that similar to how Quebec or how Manitoba has been one of the most generous provinces in Canada, we've seen that Quebec actually has donated the lowest share of total income for some time now. If we look at 2012, a decade ago, we see that Quebec only donated 0.27% of total income, so almost the same as in this year. And so they've seen the lowest share of total income donated to charity for some time now.
So, what kind of an impact does that have on society for that lower level of generosity?
Absolutely. So as generosity declines, the clear impact is that charities ultimately have less resources with which to help Canadians who are in need, to help service their communities, and generally just help improve quality of life for many Canadians and families.
Wow. And of course, you say that one of the most striking things about these trends is that the extent of charitable giving fell in every Canadian jurisdiction.
Absolutely, yeah, and when we refer to the extent of charitable giving, we're of course referring to the share of tax filers who are donating to charity. And you're correct that that has fallen in every single province and nationally over the decade from 2012 to 2022. So we can talk about which provinces are doing better than others. We can label Manitoba as the most generous province in Canada, but we have to recognize that even provinces like Manitoba have seen a considerable decline over many years now.
Okay, that's interesting. The provinces where the drops were most pronounced, I believe, according to your study, are Saskatchewan, right?
Yeah,
So, what was
yeah,
it, decreasing by almost 31%?
yeah. Just about 31%. Saskatchewan. We also saw Uh, Prince Edward Island declined by a little over 30%, as well as Alberta. So those three provinces definitely saw the largest decline in the share of tax filers who are donating to charity.
Really? And what time frame are we looking at where Alberta decreased by almost 30%?
Yeah, so that's over the decade
Over the
from
decade, from 2000,
2012
right?
to
Okay, for
2022.
about 12 years there. And of course, obviously, the question is any reason for this, but it looks like that's a hard one to answer.
Yes, and it's one that is interesting when we look at the data and how certain provinces may be declining. Alberta is a good case study where we see that it has declined considerably in the share of tax filers who are donating to charity. But on the other hand, it's actually seen one of the smallest declines in the share of income that's donated to charity. It had only a 3.6% decline over that decade. And actually, Alberta, from 2021 to 2022, Alberta was the only province that actually saw an increase in that year in the share of income donated. So there's certainly been variations in the data, and some provinces perform better than others, but there is this general decline that has occurred for some time now that is present in every province.
Yeah, so it sounds like the people that are donating in Alberta are still giving the same share of in their income or a little higher. It's just less people are doing it.
Yeah, there's a smaller share, absolutely.
Is it it is interesting also that the depth of generosity in the U.S. has been considerably higher than Canada for many years, many decades actually. So can you share some stats on that?
Absolutely, yeah. And so you're right. We see that in the U.S., the depth of charitable giving, which is the level of the share of income that's donated, has been considerably higher. So we don't have the stats for 2022, but if we look at 2021 data, we see that Americans donated 1.22% of their total income to charity. And looking at Canada in that year, Canadians only donated 0.55% of their total income. So that's less than half of the depth that Americans were donating. And to put that into perspective, that means that if Canadians had donated the same share of total income as Americans, that would mean there would have been $14.4 billion more donated to charity in that year. So it's a
Wow.
considerable difference.
Yeah, and that was 2022,
That was 2021. We unfortunately we
2021.
don't have the data
Okay.
for 2022 in
Yeah.
the United
I was
States.
gonna say, I wonder if COVID had anything to do with that, but then it's looking just the opposite in the US.
Yeah,
And
it really comes down to the difference in timing of the release. The U.S. tends to release their data a bit later than Canadian provinces.
okay.
So, but we've absolutely seen this difference in the depth of giving for some time now.
Interesting. And of course, are you able to break down whether rural areas are giving more generously than metro areas?
So reviews of the literature haven't necessarily highlighted rural versus urban as a factor that plays into the level of charitable giving. Rather, they tend to focus on those other factors such as level of after-tax income, religious affiliation, age of the population, those types of things. So if we looked at the data, and we don't have that in this study, but if we did look at the data, there's the possibility that there could be differences in the level of giving between rural and urban, but it may come down to differences in those other factors.
Okay. You mentioned religion. Do we know if religious individuals tend to give more or less than secular people?
So yeah, the research suggests that higher levels of religious affiliation are associated with higher levels of charitable giving in jurisdictions, and that can come down to the fact that some religions promote charitable giving as a moral obligation in a sense, or some religions may even require that their members donate a fixed share of their income to charity every year.
Okay, interesting. What about demographics? Are you looking at age groups? Are certain age groups donating more than others?
Yeah, the general research does suggest that age certainly plays a role, and we see that play out in the data for 2022. If we look at Canadians aged 65 and up, they averaged a donation of about a little over 3,200 in 2022. And if we look at younger generation or younger cohorts, we see that the average charitable donation declines, and that the youngest age group, Canadians aged 25 and below, recorded the smallest average donation at $480.
Wow. Based on tax filers, are you able to see if wealthier people donate more because they have more funds available?
So it is generally understood within the literature that yes, as people and households have more money in their pockets, earn higher incomes, they are able to donate more to charity, and we do see that play out that higher income in individuals or higher incomes in jurisdictions are associated with higher levels of charitable giving.
Hmm. And of course, like we all know, one of the benefits of of donating is you get that tax benefit. But then I understand that there are studies that would suggest that there might even be some health benefits to giving.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I can't speak on the health benefits associated with being generous. I haven't seen any studies that list that as a
Hmm.
as an outcome, or I haven't read them personally.
Right.
But I can certainly speak to the fact that you're right. Governments absolutely use the tax system to try and promote charitable giving. In Canada, we can receive tax credits for our charitable donations, which lowers the amount of taxes that we owe. And so, what that essentially does is that it lowers the cost to donate because some of that donation is being offset by lower taxes. And so that helps promote higher levels of charitable giving.
Yeah, I would think there's a psychological benefit also to altruism. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? I think we are out of time here. I didn't get through all my questions, but Grady, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Grady Munro is a policy analyst at the Fraser Institute and the co-author of the study Generosity in Canada, the 2024 Generosity Index. And you can read that at thefraserinstitute.org.